Okay, so moving on with the factoring. So what we did is greatest common factor. And greatest common factor, as I said earlier, this is the first question you're going to ask yourself. Okay, you're going to always ask, do I have a greatest common factor? No matter what you have. Now, the second kind of factoring is called the difference of squares. What does the word square mean to you? When you hear the word square, what does that mean? Or a squared term, let's put it that way. Quadratic. Or a term that has a power of 2, right? Or let's say, can you give me squared numbers? 4. 6. No.
16. Yes.
16.
36.
36.
49.
Yep.
81.
Sure. How about 9?
Yeah, 9.
Okay, how about 25?
Yeah.
And how do I get these numbers? These numbers are if you have 1 squared, that is what? 1 squared is 1. 2 squared is
4.
4. 3 squared is 9. I get that all the time. A lot. This is the most common mistake. 3 squared is not 6. It's not. 4 squared, 16. 5 squared, 25. 6 squared, 36. If you see that green sheet that I've given you, the back of it, if you are not 100% sure of what square terms are, what you can do is you can actually fill this out and you can use it on your test or on your quiz. So this way you would know, you look at it and it goes only up to 12 squared, right? So you do that on the calculator, 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, whatever. And then this way you can see them and you can recognize them. Okay? They're also right here, right? So you have them up to 10 squared. Okay? You need to be able to recognize these squared terms. Okay? Because we're gonna have to recognize them so we can factor them. They're special for us. Now, a squared term, a squared number, we've already identified the squared numbers, right? 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, and 100. This is up to just 10 squared. It's continuous, right? Now, how would I recognize a letter if it's a squared term? What does it have to have on top of it? So x to the power of what? 2. But it can also have x to the power of 4. It can also have x to the power of 6, x to the power of 8, x to the power of 10. So I'm using all these numbers. Listen to them. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on. 12. What do we call these numbers? The 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 10, 12.
Time table 2.
Yes, we call them even numbers. Yes. So any term, any letter that has an even exponent, even means 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, so the multiples of 2, right? Then we call them as squared terms. Okay? So here, let's look at this example. So if I have 81 x to the power of 6, can you tell me if this is a squared term or not? So here's what you have to look at. Is 81 a squared number? Yes, it is. Because 9 squared gives me 81. So 81 is a squared number. Good. That's the first check. The second check, you're going to look at the letter. And then, does the letter have an even exponent? Yes, it does. Then this is a squared term.
So how can you square like x6?
How can you square root it, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I want to square root this, because square root is the opposite of square, right? Square root of 81 is 9. To square root x to the power of 6, you divide the 6 by 2. And we're going to learn why when we do exponents. So for now, just remember, when you square root it, if it's even, right, and then you want to square root it, you divide it by 2, and that becomes, sorry, that's a 2, and that becomes 9x to the power of 3. Okay? And that's why they have to be even number, because they have to be divisible by 2. They're looking at me like I am an alien coming down and trying to convince you. Okay. Can you at least determine if it is a squared term or not? So I'm going to give you another one. Here. Is this a squared term?
No.
Yes.
Okay. Hand up if you say no. So no, 1, 2. So 1, 2, 3. Just say no. Hands up if you say yes. Hands up if you don't know.
You said for
There's 2 people that you guys not give me the answer. Yes or no? Is that a square term or no? Okay. People who said no, can you put your hand up? You are right. It is not. Can you explain to me why not?
You said for it to be a square term, the exponent has to be a real number.
That's right. Is 9 an even number?
No.
No.
What about the 100?
It doesn't matter. It has to be all or none.
Oh,
Right? So, yes, I know, and that's why I gave you this. Right? 100 is a squared term, but 9, if I do this, and I want to find it, that's going to be 10x to the power of 9 over 2, which is going to be a decimal, which is not a squared term. Okay? But we're only talking about, we're talking about squared term, not cube term. Okay? Very important. Don't mix up the 2. Okay? Now, it's very important that you understand which one are square term and which one are not. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. So, why is that? So, another term is number. If one square rooted, the result is a whole number. And then we talked about the different squared numbers. So this is,
A number is a what?
it's a squared number. If when you square root it, so when you do the square root of it, it's going to give you a whole number. Okay, we talked about this. So 9, if I square root 9, it's going to give me a 3. If I square root 16, it's going to give me a 4. So when I square root 25, it's going to give me 5. Square root 81, that's going to give me 9. Square root 100, it's going to give me 10. So these are squared terms. Okay? And then we talked about squared, these are squared numbers. We talked about squared terms, they have to have an even exponent. And then to square root it, you just divide by 2. Is that clear for everyone? Okay, now, in order for it to qualify, in order for, I'm gonna call it a binomial because it's a binomial. Can you guys remind me what a binomial means? Sum or difference of 2 terms. So bi means 2, so you have 2 terms. Okay? So in order for a binomial to qualify to be a difference of squares, must have the following. Must have 2 squared terms. What does the word difference mean? Add or subtract. Subtract. So you must have 2 squared terms with a minus in between them. If you don't have that, it's not a difference of squares. Okay? So I'm going to highlight the word. So the difference of squares is a binomial. Binomial means 2 terms with 2 perfect square terms being subtracted. So the first check, you have to check if they're square terms. The second check, you have to check that there is a minus in between them. If not, you can't do the following factor. Remember, I'm still factoring. I'm going to get to it. Okay. Are we okay up to now? All right, let's look at this thing. So the question is asking factor, and then you have 9x squared minus 16. The first thing you're going to look at is 9x squared, a squared term. Yes, 9 is a squared term, and x has an even exponent. Good. Is 16 a squared term? Yes, because 4 squared gives me 16. So that's why use the back of that green sheet if you don't remember. Okay? Now, so this is where I'm going to check both terms are square terms. Now, do I have a subtraction in between the two? Good. So I can follow the following factoring method. We call this factoring method the difference of squares. This is what the steps that you have to do. Okay? So I'm going to show you step by step, but then technically you can do it in one step if you want. Okay? First thing you're going to do is you're going to create two sets of brackets. One bracket has a plus in the middle, and the other has a negative in the middle. So you're going to create two brackets. One has a plus, one has a minus. You're going to square root the first term of the polynomial and place 1 in each bracket in first position. So, eyes on me please, I'll give you time to copy this. So my first term is 9x squared. I'm going to have to square root 9x squared. So when I square root 9x squared, what do I get?
3x.
3x. Because square root of 9 is 3. X squared, if you divide it by 2, that's going to give you x. Right? So, that being said, in the first position, right before the plus, you're going to put a 3x. And right before the minus, you're going to put a 3x. Then, you're going to take your second term, and then you're going to square root again. So square root of 16 is 4. So in the second position, you're going to put 4 and 4. So your final answer, so your final answer is this. Okay? So to factor 9x squared minus 16, you're going to get this answer. Do you have to show me these two steps? No, you don't. These are steps just for me to make it visual for you. So what are we doing? These are the steps we're doing. You can right away end up with the last step. Okay? Some people, they like to write this, which is also fine. So they start with this. They open two brackets. They write plus and minus, and then they write that. Just so they know what they're doing. And then they just write the answer, which is 3x plus 4, 3x minus. Okay? Because technically what I did here is I took the square root of 9x squared and I put it here, and I took the square root of 16 and I put it here. So they show it in the middle step, and then they write their answer at the bottom. Yes?
Are you ever going to give us a question where difference of squares factoring is impossible?
Is not possible?
Yeah. Or will there always be a way? No. It's
What if I give you this? You should be able to kind of, I probably will not, but just in case, would you be able to factor this? Because I made a mistake. Would you be able to factor that one that we put on the top? I want to hear a conversation. Yes or no?
No.
No.
Who's going to say no? Who's going to say yes? And you guys have to convince me why yes, why no. Yes.
No.
Why not?
We don't have subtraction.
That's right. You see that this one? Yes, you do have two terms. Yes, both terms are squared. But in the middle, it's a plus. You can't factor it. Because to qualify, right, for being a difference of squares, you must have a negative. So in this case, you should be aware of this and you should know, because I told you, right? that you can't factor when you have a positive in there. But that doesn't mean you can't look if you have a common factor. Do you have a common factor? Do you have a number that you can divide both by? No. Right? So this is not factor.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, in the homework booklet, that is a question, right? So how do you know, like, whether to solve them in a common factor or a difference of square?
Okay, so when it comes, we're gonna learn another method. So it's not only two methods that you're gonna have to follow. Sometimes you have to put two methods together. So the first thing that you're gonna ask yourself, do I have a common factor? This is the question you have to ask yourself, and this is always your first question. Then if you say yes, that's great, do the common factoring, but that doesn't mean you're done. Because you might be able to do difference of squares afterwards. Okay? Which is, speaking of which, I'm gonna go back here. And then if you can't common factor, then you're gonna have to look if it's the difference of squares or not. Okay? And again, I said that we're gonna learn another method. So I'm gonna teach you how to identify which method to use. Okay? Now, going back to here, I did my common factoring, right? I did 25, factored it out, and then I have x squared minus 4. Now I want you to look inside the bracket and tell me if you notice anything inside the bracket.
Yeah, both of them like are
Both of them are squared term.
and like they have a negative sign.
So can I use the method that I just learned to factor the leftovers?
Yeah.
Yes. You look here. X squared is a squared term. 4 is a squared term. And there is a minus in between them.
What about 25 then?
25 will stay outside. So 25 will stay outside.
I thought this question was over.
I told you I'm coming back to this. Didn't I? We're not listening. I told you I'm coming back to this. If the question was asking you just to common factor, yes, you're over. But if the question is asking you to factor completely, then you're gonna have to keep going. Okay? Now tell me what would be in my brackets.
X positive 2 and x negative 2.
And the common question that I always get, can I put it as x minus 2 and then x plus 2? What would be my answer?
Yeah.
Yes, because it's multiplication, it doesn't matter which one goes first. So you can write it as x minus 2,
So
x
is this
plus
the
2.
final answer? I know you have to go on.
That's the final answer for now.
For now?
For this. So, does this answer your question to your previous? Like, which one do I do? Common factoring is always your first step. Okay? Because you want to get rid of that like bulkiness, if you wish. Okay? You want to get rid of these big numbers. Then after that, you're gonna ask yourself, can I keep going? There's two other methods. One of them is I learned today, which is difference of squares, and the other one I'm not gonna bother even touching today. We're gonna learn that on Monday. It's called sum and product. Okay, you know that. Then you're gonna have to identify which one do I use. Can I use them? Okay. All right. So let me go back to this. Okay. Example 2A. What are you gonna ask yourself when you see two terms? First thing you're gonna ask, do I have a common factor? Do I?
Yes.
For the first one, do I have a common factor?
No.
No. Then you're gonna ask yourself, okay, there's two terms, so that's a binomial, but I have to think about difference of squares. Are my two terms squared? Yes. Is there a negative between them? Yes. Can I use difference of squares?
Yes.
Absolutely. So I put two brackets, and then I square root x squared. What's square root of x squared? What's the square root of 25? And it's done. Okay, I'm gonna show you the middle step for those of you who need the middle step. How about the second one? Do I have a common factor?
Yes.
What is it?
That's 4x.
No. Do I have a common factor?
No.
No. Remember, I'm teaching you to ask yourself that common factor question.
What's the question?
A lot of you are gonna miss it. So hear me say it 500 times. Okay, I don't have a common factor. Do I have two terms, two squared terms?
Yes.
Yes. Is there a minus in between?
Yes.
Good, so I can use difference of squares. So that means I'm gonna square root my first term plus the square root of the second term, y squared, and then square root the first term minus the square root of the second. So what's the square root of 16x squared?
4x.
4x. What's the square root of 1y squared?
Y.
Y. Okay, you're gonna do the next one.